Now we know when we run our program, the program will continue executing until we press Ctrl C, because we're literally trapping the program in this while loop right here. And when we press Ctrl C, the program will quit, but it'll also display this ugly error message. Now this message is actually very helpful when something is going wrong, because sometimes when you're programming, your program might crash in the middle of execution. So you'll actually get a message similar to this one telling you what went wrong so that you can fix it. Now in our case, nothing went wrong and the program crashed because the user entered Ctrl C. And you can also see from this message, it's telling you that the reason why all of this happened, or the reason why the program quit execution, is because of a keyboard interrupt. So this is a type of an exception that can happen during the execution of the program. Now, like I said, there are many types of exceptions, and sometimes you're gonna need to be able to handle this exception in a certain way so that your program continues executing, or so that it can adapt to the exception that happened. Now, in this lecture, I'm gonna show you a very simple example of handling this exception. So whenever the user enters Ctrl C, we're gonna be able to capture this exception and do something. In today's example, we're only gonna print a statement and hide this ugly error message, but the same method can be used to execute any type of code when the exception happens. And I'm actually gonna show you an example of that in the next lectures, where we'll be restoring the ARP values to the way they were. But first, let's learn how we can handle exceptions in Python. The way to do that, first of all, you wanna see where your exception might happen. So we know that our exception is happening in this while loop right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, I want you to try to go and execute this while loop. Now the try statement is similar to the while and to the if statements, so that it takes a block of code to execute. So the block of code that we want to execute in this try statement is this while loop. So basically we're telling Python that I want you to try to execute this code right here. But at the same time, I want you to accept a keyboard interrupt. And I basically got this keyboard interrupt, or the name of the exception, from the error. So you can see that it's given us the name in here, which is keyboard interrupt. So what we're saying is, we're saying that Python, please, I want you to try to execute this while loop. And I want you to expect or accept this kind of error. If this error happens, I'm gonna give you a block of code to execute as well. And in here, you can use a function, you can use any type of code that you want. But in this very simple example, we're just gonna print. And we're gonna say detected Ctrl C, quitting. And that's it. So let's have one very quick look on the code. We're using a try and accept statement. The try statement takes a block of code to execute. So this is what's going to happen when Python interpreter reaches this part. It'll never execute the exception part unless this exception happens. So the loop is going to keep running, or the block of code that you use in the try statement will keep running until this error happens. So like I said, this error can be any type of error. For example, in the previous lecture, when we use the integer in the print statement here, you can use a try to detect that. In our example, we're waiting for a keyboard interrupt because that's what happened in here. So this code in the try block will keep executing until Python detects a keyboard interrupt or someone presses Ctrl C. If someone presses Ctrl C, we're gonna print this statement right here. So let's run our code again. And as you can see now, the code is running normally. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl C. And as you can see, we got a message saying detected Ctrl C, quitting. So we didn't get this error message in here. Now this is actually very handy, and you'll see the power of it as we write more complex programs and as you start learning more about Python. Right now we're using it in a very simple way because I want to give you an introduction of it, but you'll see in the next lectures we're actually going to be implementing more code in here so that when the person presses Ctrl+C, we will actually fix the network and restore the ARP tables to the way that they should be set, or to the way that they were before running our attack.